What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training, and today I have the ACSS Raptor. It's 1:6 power single focal plane scope, which is the best kind of scope, would be single focal plane. And this guy is yet another entry in a million low power variable optics. This guy is actually pretty affordable in that right as well. So let's talk about a bunch of things with regards to this, right? Because it's a single focal plane scope, me personally, I zero it at 6, and that's when the reticle gets nice and huge. And as far as the ACSS reticle is concerned, when it's in a format like this, and you'll see an image of that now. When it's that size especially, and when I'm trying to get a read on targets that are farther away, that really does help. It does have illumination in it, but obviously that's a secondary function to where if you're dealing with sunlight that's beginning to look like this, to where you're starting to deal with twilight conditions and that kind of stuff, to where you really don't want just a black reticle out there, or if it's the day and you really need some contrast between your black reticle and everything else. So the illumination that's there is helpful, but most like etched reticle scopes, you don't want to leave it on. It doesn't have very long battery life. It's gonna die if you do, but that's everybody at this point, right? So what I've got it mounted on is Aero Precision non-QD mount. It's supposed to be super lightweight. It is. It locks down in 3 different locations, which is also really good. It helps make it a very, very solid mount, and the rings themselves are super solid themselves. So that really does help as far as making sure that your glass is nice and clear and that you're focused and everything else, and that you have a good, truest as possible to 1 power. You can sit here and dick with focus and everything else back here. So that really does help. You know, just being able to rotate that and make things nice and clear at 1 power really does help, because if we dial all the way up, make our target area and whatnot nice and clear, we dial back down to 1, and it looks just about like we've got a 1 power, and that does help. You know, especially if you got a set iron sights on there that are fixed and that kind of deal. This one does not, mostly because there's just other crap that a whole bunch of equipment got moved to from this rifle. So talking about the reticle itself and how we're adjusted, I like how they set these up, because these are pretty stiff. These are 1/4 minute adjustments, which are really good. So it's a 1/4 inch at 100, and they're stiff. You know, so they're very loud. You don't feel them very well, which, you know, that is what it is. But as far as making adjustments, doing math on zeros and that kind of stuff, it's pretty easy to do. And frankly, I'm not asking a ton from a 1:6 power single focal plane scope. What I need it to be able to do is I need it to be zeroed, because it has a ballistic drop compensated reticle in there. I'm not really worried about twisting turrets and that kind of stuff. I'm more extrapolating, and that's all ballistic drop compensated reticle really is that once you're zeroed and you've collected some dope, from there, the reason why you're collecting dope is so that you can more or less take very, very educated guesses on shooting things farther away, especially with the type of ammunition that you're using. So, you know, most of the time we're talking about like blaster ammunition and that kind of stuff that gets fired through rifles and everything else. We're not typically focused on shooting Mark II 62 sniper rifle ammunition out of these things, although you can, and very effectively. That's typically not what we're working with. What we're working with is like M855, M855A1, XM193, the stuff that dudes are using to fight, or self-defense ammunition that's out there that may not necessarily be match quality, but has good ballistic performance on targets, except for M855, because that stuff sucks. But as far as all that goes, this thing fits that bill very well, and it's cost effective. Something impressive about this and cost effectiveness is that it's not a US Optics or a Steiner or a Nightforce scope. It's not going to have the clearest of clear as far as glass clarity on a target area and that kind of stuff. However, it's surprisingly clear, and that's a big advantage. because what's riding on top of your rifle, especially if you decide that you're going to shoot further away, needs to be clear enough to where I don't get like weird blurs and weird stupid shit going on with it. What's also kind of nice about this, and it's surprisingly so, is the eye relief is very, very generous. I mean, out here, I can see it very well, okay? And as far as the glass clarity is concerned, it's very close to the world as far as having both eyes open and being able to see with both eyes. It's very close to the world itself, so I don't get any weird blemishing or any weird fog that comes up from crappier scopes, right? So, frankly, for what you're asking this to do, this kind of exceeds those expectations. Now, from what I understand, different law enforcement people and that kind of stuff use this. That doesn't impress me because cops tend to do retarded crap. But the fact that it's been around for a while, and I've seen a lot of these in, just in regular classes and that kind of stuff. I've seen a lot of these, and I've seen a lot of these do well. And what's kind of funny is that whether it's on a standard length rifle like this, or whether it's on like an 11.5 or whatever, because I've seen a few of those run out in that capacity, guys tend to do very well with them. Now, the number one issue that I have with a lot of low power variable scopes is that at 1 power, after I've gotten nice and clear on my target area at max power, and then I dial down to 1, getting on a target fast tends to be my issue then after that. Because if I got to come up and I got to blast a bunch of rounds pretty close, I need to be able to do that fairly easily. Now, obviously, a lot of guys are running around with micro dots and that kind of stuff, either they're running on top or the side or whatever, because no matter what you're using, there's that little bit of weirdness going on there. And because it's a tube magnified freaking optic, what you're trying to avoid and why you're using those, angled dots and everything else is because you don't want to line up weird, get scope shadow, or something very small like a small cant like this deletes your reticle entirely. So that's what a lot of guys are using that for. However, if I do have to use this up close, it can be done, right? And it can be done very well. So, oh, and here's the thing too, whether it's at 100 or whether it's at 400, and I've tried this already, the turrets are accurate. Okay, so quarter-minute adjustments and that kind of stuff out to 400. I sat there and I'd shoot a group with pretty good quality ammo. Like we're using Mark 262, which isn't like the absolute best in the world anymore, but it's still really good stuff. And then, you're at 400 yards and then you come over what would be a half minute and it moves over exactly a half minute. Or we're doing the same thing at 3 and 2. The turrets themselves are very accurate. And those are two big things about lower priced tube optics that are just not a thing. A lot of times, it's almost like 1913 sections where like no set of turrets are the same, to where, if you make what you're thinking is a quarter-minute adjustment, but it's far more or far less than that, relatively speaking, that's very important to me personally. So obviously the two things that I really, really need is that I need the glass clarity to be there. I need this to be as close to 1 power as possible when I'm down to 1 power. And the turrets have got to be accurate, right? The reticle itself is going to be the reticle. It's not going to be truly precise, but you can hit stuff far away. But the turrets being very accurate and the glass clarity being there are huge in the department of tube optics and what you're going to ask of them as you go forward. So this guy has a capability of punching above its weight, and I'm very appreciative of that. So as far as these optics are concerned, if anybody asks me about them, I personally recommend them. I'm not an enormous fan, and this is rather obvious, but I'm not an enormous fan of variable power optics in the first place, because my eyeballs work and 5.56 doesn't go too terribly far unless you're kidding it to go specifically far. And if that's the case, you might as well go with a better caliber, but that's a totally different discussion. I'll hop off that soapbox. However, if there is a specific need, where the primary job of your rifle is to go farther, and you need to reserve the ability to go close. And you're also trying not to absolutely rape yourself, especially now with ammo cost being what it is. This ain't a bad place to go. This ain't a bad place to go. Single focal plane's great. You can zero it at max power. Make sure that you're nice and clear, dial back, and you're pretty good to whatever other distance that cartridge would be effective for. You know, you're running around with your Tula and your Wolf and that kind of stuff. This optic will outperform that ammunition by a lot, and that's saying something for something at this price point. And I'm not going to quote price points on a video because that changes with the wind, right? But these are lower cost tube optics that do a lot more than they're asking for. So I'm actually very pleased with it, and I think that this is going to go significantly further than this video does. So yeah, and the Barrett Rec 7 review is coming eventually. So with that said, guys, if you want to come out and train with us, you absolutely can. Obviously, you guys know my stance on training, especially when we're talking about the times that we're living in, especially now. So I get it. Times are hard as far as ammo and that kind of stuff and a whole bunch of other crap. We have to train, and we have to train as much as we can. Speaking of that, there is a vehicle class that's coming up in May. Okay, I highly suggest that, especially guys that are experienced behind guns and that kind of stuff, go jump into vehicles and move around them because we drive them all the time. Right? That's in Maine. That's out here in Drakesboro, Kentucky, on this range, actually where I stand. We have 2 vehicles over there. We're getting a 3rd here within the week, I believe. So that is what it is. If you want to support us on Patreon, look, you guys have taken us pretty far in a very short amount of time, and I'm very appreciative. So if you want to get some out for yourself, $41 a month allows you to train with us as often as you want, and just look at the list prices, do some math. It pays for itself very, very quickly. The guy standing behind the camera has absolutely abused this policy, and that's what it's there for. It's to help develop guys and get them the ability to save a little bit of money, because I recognize that this crap is expensive in as many classes as I've taken in the past. So that is what it is. If you want to check us out on Facebook, you absolutely can. Links for all of this crap are in the description below. And remember, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.